President Trump signing that bill compelling the Justice Department to release the Epstein files, doing so Wednesday evening, paving the way for all related documents to be made public within 30 days. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York City. And Alex, now the question being asked is, what will we see and when will we see it? And I understand there's a chance we may not see everything. Why is that?
You're absolutely right, Del. There is a chance that we may not see all of the details from the Epstein files. That 30-day countdown is on the Department of Justice, really scrambling now to put together the redactions for this. There are some loopholes in this legislation that will take out some things that maybe we would have thought would be taken out in the first place. Let's look at some of these loopholes there. First, of course, they're going to withhold any identifying victim information. They're also going to withhold anything that contains child sexual abuse material, anything that contains graphic images, things like death, physical abuse, or injury, and then anything related to national security and foreign policy. But I want to talk about that middle part right there where it says jeopardizes an active investigation. We heard earlier this year from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, that they didn't uncover any evidence that would warrant an investigation into third parties, meaning people who might be named in some of these investigative materials. So she effectively closed the investigation. Then last week, we had the president come forward and direct the Department of Justice to investigate former President Bill Clinton, entities like J.P. Morgan Chase, other men specifically that he had named, including Larry Summers. And because of that, essentially, we are seeing a potential for a new investigation. And so we could see the Department of Justice try to withhold some materials based on the fact that they do have this potential new active investigation. But I spoke with a former prosecutor, a now criminal defense attorney, about this. And essentially what he said is, fine, you can decide not to release materials specifically relating to those named individuals you are going to investigate, but really you should be using essentially a scalpel as you look at these redactions. You shouldn't just be blocking out entire documents. Listen to what he said.
If a particular Democrat or Republican is being investigated and you have direct or collateral evidence or circumstantial, pardon me, maybe that gets taken back and that gets held back or redacted, but not the wholesale entirety of what is in that file.
Now, the Department of Justice has to provide publicly in writing justification for any redactions that we are going to see. Now, what's kind of interesting about this is by naming former President Clinton as someone who should be investigated, he might actually be protecting any information that we could see about Clinton because they're not going to name him if he's part of an investigation. So anything related to him, we might not actually end up seeing. And then kind of under the same idea is that if there's any information about the president in there, he's not under investigation, so any of that material should also be disclosed without redactions.
Alex, break it down for me, if you will. What do we know about this investigation?
Well, look, the Attorney General has every right to appoint somebody else to lead this investigation. But what is interesting is that she appointed the Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton. He obviously is here in New York. He is the former SEC chairman. He worked in the first Trump administration. And notably, he has never been a prosecutor before. He replaced Danielle Sassoon, who was the acting U.S. attorney earlier this year. She resigned after refusing the Department of Justice and the president's order to drop the investigation, the indictment into Mayor Eric Adams. So he is actually the replacement here, which is something that this lawyer, Jeremy Saland, said is really something that we should take note of. Listen.
So it should be lost on no one that not only is the president dictating this, but it's going to the Manhattan Southern District of New York office to investigate where the current sitting prosecutor has ties to the Donald Trump administration and is taking the place of a former U.S. attorney or acting U.S. attorney who refused to violate what she believed were ethical duties and adhere to what Donald Trump wanted.
And it's also just notable that this is where the second investigation took place, the first one being in Florida, the second one being here, and this is the one that ultimately resulted in those 2019 charges that we saw against Jeffrey Epstein. He was obviously here in prison, and that is part of the materials that we could be getting in terms of looking at anything related to his imprisonment and Ghislaine Maxwell's as well.
And Alex, some of the president's corner have tried to shift the focus to that decision by 2 New York judges in August not to release the grand jury materials in this case. Remind us why they didn't and how much light that could shed on where we are moving forward.
Yeah, these judges declined to release the grand jury materials, not only for Jeffrey Epstein, but relating to Ghislaine Maxwell. She was tried here in New York as well. And they did so pretty much for the same reason. They said anything inside of these grand jury materials would be inside all of the Epstein files. So by releasing all of the files, you would get some of these grand jury materials. Now, the judge in the Epstein case said that the grand jury materials is really only 70 pages of transcripts, a couple of pages of letters that were written by the victims and their attorneys, that there really wasn't that much there. And the Maxwell judge effectively said that this is a diversion, both of them encouraging the Department of Justice to be the one to take this into their hands and to release the information there. The Maxwell judge also, Del, saying that we wouldn't see any new light shed by releasing that information from him.
Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller live for us in New York. Alex, as always, we thank you.